"You'll never make us proud." My mother Eleanor's sharp, piercing voice rang through the vaulted marble atrium of the Kensington estate, slicing straight through the classical cello duet playing for 90 prominent real estate tycoons, city council members, and news crews. Look at you standing by the service entrance in that plain dress uniform, pretending your little desk job in the armed forces gives you dignity, while your brother built our family's $50 million logistics firm with his own bare hands. I stood motionless beside the heavy oak double doors in my Marine Corps service dress uniform, my back locked at attention, my right hand resting deep inside my coat pocket, fingers pressing against the sharp, cold edge of a brass tactical key, stamped Foxtrot 88. At the center of the illuminated ballroom hung a giant silk banner celebrating Kensington Logistics, Citizen of the Year Award for Derrek Kensington. Standing beside my mother on the stage was my younger brother, Derrek, wearing a tailor-made double-breasted suit, casually swirling a glass of single malt scotch, a cruel, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Standing right behind him was my former fiancé, Victor, wearing a gold signet ring I had purchased for him 4 years ago with my overseas hazard pay. "Mother, stop this scene," I said, keeping my voice dead flat, using the cold, controlled cadence I had spent 7 years perfecting as Captain Nora Kensington, Logistics Intelligence Specialist for the 2nd Marine Logistics Group. "You sent an emergency summons to my commanding officer at 0500 hours, claiming Dad's medical conservatorship required an urgent biometric signature to renew his life support coverage." "I lied to force your pathetic presence into this room on regional television," Eleanor shouted into the wireless podium microphone, her diamond bangles glittering under the chandeliers as a wave of quiet whispers broke across the crowd. "I wanted every municipal investor in this state to see what an ungrateful leech looks like. You spent 7 years hiding in overseas barracks while Derrek and Victor worked 90-hour weeks to expand our family's emergency relief shipping network. Meanwhile, you refused to contribute a single dollar from your officer salary to support your own father's medical foundation." Victor stepped up to the microphone, adopting an expression of mournful, calculated disappointment that made my blood run cold. "It tears me apart to say this, Nora," Victor announced to the silent room. "I tried to support you, but your paranoia, coldness, and bitter jealousy towards Derrek made a future together impossible. Derrek is saving small businesses. You're just a bitter ghost who abandoned her family for a government check." A sharp wave of hostile murmurs rippled across the room. Wealthy developers shook their heads in disgust. A camera crew from the regional news channel zoomed in directly on my unblinking eyes. Derrek leaned toward the microphone, pulling a gold fountain pen from his pocket, the exact pen my late father had used to sign my enlistment papers 7 years ago. "Hand over your father's master encrypted drive, Derrek," Derrek whispered into the microphone, his voice dripping with arrogance. "The master drive doesn't belong to Kensington Logistics, Derrek," I replied softly, my hand tightening around the brass key marked Foxtrot 88 in my pocket. "She's completely out of her mind," my Aunt Beatrice chimed in from the VIP table, holding up her glass. "Security, drag this embarrassment out into the snow before she ruins Derrek's award ceremony." 2 heavy private security guards stepped out of the curtained alcove, closing in on my left and right flanks. But before their gloves could brush my uniform sleeves, the heavy brass-trimmed entrance doors slammed open with a metallic crash that echoed off the high ceiling. 4 Marines in pristine dress blue uniforms marched straight into the atrium, their brass buttons flashing under the track lights, their eyes locked in dead-eyed tactical focus on the stage. The entire ballroom fell into a suffocating, breathless silence. The 2 private security guards froze in place, their eyes widening as they recognized the silver insignia pinned to the front officer collar. First Sergeant Marcus Vance, flanked by 3 active-duty Marines from the 2nd Marine Logistics Group. First Sergeant Vance marched down the central aisle without wavering an inch. He passed my aunt, passed Victor, and stopped 2 paces directly in front of me. He snapped his heels together with an echoing crack, raised his right hand, and held a rigid, flawless salute. "Captain Nora Kensington," Vance declared, his voice carrying through the quiet room like a rifle shot. "Operational Directive Foxtrot 88 is fully authorized by the Armed Forces Criminal Investigative Service and the Department of Transportation. The floor is yours, ma'am." Eleanor's microphone squeaked loudly as her hand jerked. Derrek's smug smile evaporated into a blank, frozen mask. "First Sergeant Vance?" Eleanor stuttered, her polished composure cracking completely. "What is the meaning of this intrusion? This is a private civic celebration. Nora is just a low-level supply clerk who was discharged for administrative incompetence." Vance didn't even turn his head. He remained standing at attention beside me as I took 3 deliberate steps toward the center stage. I pulled the brass tactical key stamped Foxtrot 88 from my pocket and held it up under the direct glare of the spotlight. The exact key my biological father, Master Sergeant Arthur Kensington, had secretly pressed into my palm inside his VA hospital room 3 weeks before he slipped into a coma. "7 years ago," I said, my voice projecting across the room with absolute razor-sharp clarity, "my mother and brother informed me that Kensington Logistics was facing total bankruptcy, that Dad's specialized neuro-rehabilitation costs were $40,000 a month, and that if I didn't sign over my military power of attorney to Victor, Dad would be evicted from his care facility." "Don't listen to her," Derrek shouted, stepping to the front edge of the stage, his hands trembling around his scotch glass. "I signed the military power of attorney," I continued, completely ignoring my brother, as the crowd watched in mounting tension. "And for 84 consecutive months, $16,000 a month was automatically deducted from my combat hazard pay, my flight bonuses, and my officer pension trust. I lived in a bare, unheated room off base, wore worn civilian boots, and ate basic field rations, believing every single cent was keeping my father alive in a private medical suite in San Diego." "It was," Eleanor shrieked, clutching her pearl necklace with pale knuckles. "Every cent went directly to his medical team." "Then why," First Sergeant Vance spoke up, pulling a heavy blue federal dossier from his portfolio, "does the Department of Veterans Affairs official database show that Master Sergeant Arthur Kensington was transferred to a fully federally funded VA medical center in San Diego 7 years ago, paid for entirely by his active military benefits?" The silence in the atrium was absolute. Eleanor froze like a statue, her mouth open, her face completely drained of color. "You lied to me for 7 years, Mom. You told me Dad was in strict medical quarantine, that visitors were restricted by hospital protocol. You sent me manufactured monthly progress reports stamped with a fake doctor's seal, just so you, Derrek, and Victor could siphon over $1.4 million of my combat pay to fund Derrek's real estate firm and Victor's luxury lifestyle." "Nora," Victor stammered, stepping back from Derrek, holding his hands up in a desperate gesture of innocence. "Nora, please, listen to me. It wasn't my idea. Your mother told me you were deployed in classified operational zones and would never cross-reference local VA records. She said we needed the capital to keep the family brand alive." "You spineless coward," Derrek screamed, turning around and shoving Victor hard against the podium. "You were the one who authorized the offshore shell accounts. You forged my sister's signature on the municipal shipping transfers." "I forged them because your mother said she held full power of attorney," Victor yelled back, his voice breaking into a panic as 90 city officials watched the 3 of them tear each other apart on stage. Before anyone could move, I walked over to the main audio-visual station beside the cello stage. I inserted the brass key, Foxtrot 88, into the master USB terminal and entered my 9-digit security clearance PIN. The giant silk banner behind them automatically unlatched and dropped to the floor, revealing a massive high-definition LED screen that flickered to life. Instead of promotional reels for Derrek's Citizen of the Year award, the screen displayed a real-time federal audit ledger from the Department of Defense Inspector General, complete with bank routing trails, red federal seals, and decrypted wire transfers. Source account: Captain N. Kensington, Combat Hazard Disability Trust. Destination account: Derrek Kensington Real Estate Holdings, Cayman Islands. Total stolen funds: $1,420,000. Classified municipal shipping permit, Foxtrot 88. Registered solely to Captain Nora Kensington. You told this room that Derrek built Kensington Logistics through business genius, I said, addressing the stunned city council members and reporters. Derrek didn't secure our city's emergency shipping contracts through merit. I cleared those routes using my active military logistics clearance during my deployment shifts. Victor stole my digital credentials using the military power of attorney my mother manipulated me into signing while I was recovering from an explosive concussion in Iraq. No, that permit belongs to the Kensington estate, Eleanor screamed, her voice cracking into a desperate shriek. A military power of attorney obtained through fraudulent medical representation is a federal felony, Mrs. Kensington, Vance stated coldly. At that exact moment, the heavy double doors of the atrium burst open once more. 6 uniformed federal marshals, accompanied by special agents from the Armed Forces Criminal Investigative Service, marched down the aisle, their tactical boots striking the marble in synchronized rhythm. The lead federal agent walked straight up the stage steps, stopping directly between Eleanor, Derrek, and Victor. Eleanor Kensington, Derrek Kensington, Victor Hayes, the agent announced firmly, his voice echoing off the glass ceiling. "Get your hands off me," Derrek shrieked, as an agent pulled his arms behind his back, the sharp, heavy click-click of steel handcuffs echoing through the silent room. "Do you know who I am? I am Derrek Kensington. I run this city's transport committee." "Your transport committee was dissolved 2 hours ago following Captain Kensington's submission of sworn federal affidavits and forensic banking ledgers." Victor offered zero resistance. He dropped to his knees on the stage floor, weeping hysterically as the officers cuffed his wrists behind his tuxedo jacket. Eleanor gasped as her silk gown caught on the podium edge while she was led away, her social standing completely obliterated before every news camera and corporate investor in the state. "Nora, stop them, please!" Eleanor sobbed, her face contorted in frantic panic as she was hauled past me toward the exit. "We are your family. You can't let these people put your own mother and brother in prison." I stood straight, my shoulders back, my chin held high, looking at my mother with absolute, unshakable calm. "You said I'd never make you proud, Mom," I said, softly, my voice carrying into every quiet corner of the atrium. "And today, I'm proud to say, I don't care." As the federal marshals escorted Eleanor, Derrek, and Victor down the aisle past a crowd of horrified investors who were already pulling their funding contracts, First Sergeant Vance and the 3 Marines stepped up beside me. They didn't offer superficial comfort. They simply brought their heels together and rendered a synchronized, silent salute of profound military respect. Slowly, every defense contractor, city official, and veteran in the room stood up from their tables, breaking into a roaring, rising standing ovation that echoed off the high ceiling, honoring the true officer who had stood her ground against absolute corruption.
I held my head high, feeling the cold weight of truth, knowing that 7 years of manipulation had finally dissolved into the unshakable peace of earned justice. You cannot cure toxic family members by sacrificing your honor, your earnings, or your truth. For 7 long years, I allowed my family to manipulate my sense of duty, believing that my silent financial sacrifices were keeping my father alive and proving my worth to a family that never valued me. I let them insult my military service, belittle my achievements, and steal my combat pay because I foolishly believed that keeping the peace was worth any personal cost. But manipulative, greedy people do not view your patience as love. They view it as an invitation to exploit you further. They will steal your hard work, dismantle your self-worth, and attempt to publicly erase you, all while playing the victim when their deception is exposed to the world. Real peace does not come from quietly enduring abuse to protect people who harm you. Real peace comes from standing firm in your integrity, stepping into the light of truth, and allowing the unyielding consequences of their own choices to dismantle their lies. Never set yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm.